So welcome to the Kīpaepae Foundations. This is session number 4 on ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. Thank you very much, Luana, Kawaʻa, and of course, Hōkūlani Holt for sharing your knowledge and teaching us about the protocol.
Okay, welcome everyone. Mahalo for being here. And, I'm just going to prattle on for a little bit so that maybe people will have a little bit of chance to join in with us as we begin today. When I look at all your faces, I think I know everybody. But nevertheless, I'm Hōkūlani Holt, and currently I have, I think I have 3 hats on. So if some of them fall off, I just let me know and help me push it back up. One is the director of Kahikino Kala, a scholarship program for Native Hawaiian students that are interested in getting STEM, Hawaiian studies, and Hawaiian language degrees. We have been very fortunate to have had this grant for 11 years, and this year will be the last year that we anticipate being able to provide this scholarship for our Native Hawaiian students. I'm also the coordinator for Hawaii Papo Keao on our campus, under which these particular presentations are focused as well. This is our first of this semester program. And it's not Joyce's fault that she put a different title for today, because Luana and I just changed our mind. So not her fault that it says haʻi ʻŌlelo, but we're really going to be doing, as you see here, ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. We'll get to haʻi ʻŌlelo, but ʻŌlelo Noʻeau is where we're going to start. At the end of this presentation, we'll be able to share with you when the other presentations are going to be offered. Luana?
Mahalo hoku, aloha mai kākou. My name is Luana Kawaʻa. I am the director at TRIO Student Support Services, which we call on our campus Paikamana. Thankful for that name that Kumu Kiope gave to the program many years ago. Paikamana has been around for a long time, over 20 years on our campus. And I've been part of the team since 2017. So I love my team. They're the best. I also teach some Hawaiian studies courses, primarily the hula courses. And that is funded through one of the grants that Keola Danahi oversees. I think it's the Hawaiian Performing Arts grant that he is running. And so I am a kumuhula. And so I have that pleasure of teaching the hula classes at the college, which I love so much. This semester, I'm teaching Hawaiian 104, which is language through hula. And it's kind of the first class that people take before taking the other 2 courses. So it's kind of that introduction into what you can look forward to in the future hula classes as well. So I'm enjoying that very much. And I'm here today in supporting Hōkū and the efforts to really increase Hawaii Papo Keao and those kinds of things on our campus, and bringing more cultural types of workshops to our Maui campus. So mahalo. Okay, so here is our agenda for today. We're going to actually go back a little bit to the previous 2 sessions where we taught 2 oli, 2 chants, Oli Aloha as well as Laukanaka. So we're going to practice that a little bit to get us started, and that's going to be kind of our icebreaker, get everybody feeling comfortable and having that opportunity to practice, because I don't know how many of you have done the chant since, maybe at convocation, yeah, at least Laukanaka. But this will just give us an opportunity to go back and ho'oma'ama'a, practice these two chants, which will be a very important part of Kīpaepae and how we do Kīpaepae. So remembering that Kīpaepae is this protocol process that we want to become familiar with so that we can start to do it on our campus. Hoku is going to share some background about ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. What are ʻŌlelo Noʻeau? Where do they come from? And then we're going to introduce different ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. I think we have 4 today that we're going to tag team in introducing and share with you the mana'o, the translation, as well as the kauna, or the layers of meaning that these ʻŌlelo Noʻeau have. And then the best part, I think, is the application, right? So how do we then take these ʻŌlelo Noʻeau? How do we use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau in our lives at the college, in the work that we do with each other, with our students, but even in our lives in general? How can ʻŌlelo Noʻeau be helpful? And then, of course, we'll have time for questions as well. So I'm going to holomua and get us started with practicing the oli. So we're going to do the Oli Aloha. So just a quick review, Oli Aloha is done in the Oli style of chanting, which is the most common style of chanting, lots of ʻiʻi or vibrato in the voice. And then there are places where we breathe and places where we hold our breath a little bit longer, and also places where maybe our voice goes up in pitch and down in pitch. And so we went over all of those, and you can go to the Kīpaepae website that Joyce has put together, and you can actually watch the whole session if you want, the Oli Aloha as well as the Laukanaka session, and learn it in greater detail. So today we're going to practice, and it's perfect because we're starting off with Oli Aloha, which is a greeting chant. And typically this would be, if we were doing Kīpaepae together, we were greeting people coming to our campus, we would start off with something like this, the Oli Aloha welcoming chant. So we're going to practice. So we can palikekua, we can sit up nice and tall. Remember, the breath comes from the na'au. So we want to make sure that we have enough air, enough space to bring that air, the breath up and forward when we chat. I'll start and I'll just go, oh, no, no. And then I'll say pa, and everybody's going to join in, and you can stay muted. So you can give them, because you're going to be muted. No inhibitions, mai hila hila, right? You can just give them 100%. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll get to a place where we can start to chant together in person and hear each other and chant with each other, which will be wonderful when that time comes. So I'll start us off onauna, and then we'll chat together. And if you're not familiar with the chant, just do the best that you can. Okay. All right, here we go. O nauna pa. O nauna I kahala me kalehu ai. Down. He halele hua no yana kanoe. O ka uno ia e ano I nei e li a nei hoi o ka hiki mai a hiki mai no o kou a hiki pu no me ke aloha. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. Woo! Maikai, how did that feel? Okay, give me an emoji or a thumbs up, or maikai, clap, yeah. Maikai, oh good, I see hearts, yay. Maikai, good. So again, you can, at any time, you know, this chant is pretty much what we call noa. It doesn't have kapu that are attached to it, right? So there aren't like, oh no, this isn't a time to do this oli. It is one that can be done pretty much at any time. So practice it. Maybe you want to start your day by chanting Oli Aloha. That would be great. Maybe you want to end your day with Oli Aloha. Just working it into your daily routine is a great way to ho'okama'aina, get more familiar and more accustomed to this Oli. Okay, we are now going to do Laukanaka. So you can click here on the slide. We'll send the slides out later after the presentation to hear the audio recording. And then, so we're just, again, we're gonna give them, because this one I think most of us are familiar with. So as a reminder, this oli is done more rhythmically in an oli kaholo style of chanting, and we clap, right? So we gotta do two things. We gotta clap our hands, upoho, upoho, pa'i, cup, cup, slap, like that, right? And chant at the same time. Okay, so I'll start us off. Pa. Oh, actually, I'm gonna just start with the clapping, and then I'm gonna say pa, and we're gonna chant. So we're gonna do 4 sets of clapping, and then go right into the oli. So here we go. Pa. Pa kamoa e ku I ke Laukanaka la. Laukanaka no na e ku haʻahe o e. E o e nā mamo ka aina aloha la. E aloha I ka aina ko ka hua hoʻi e. Ho'olu ia, ho'olau ia, ho'ohua ia la. E ohimai, e hiala ai, e ola mai e. O kako na mamo o mauia kama, e o. Maikai loa. That's a great way to get us started and transition into our ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. I did see a few things in the chat box. Oh, great, Sam. So Sam is saying that it came back to her. The nuances came back pretty quickly, right? Maikai, and that's what we want. That's okay that you forgot about the 2 lines together. I cheated and I took a breath. I was wondering if anybody caught me cheat on that one. And you know, again, the breathing, something we work towards, right? Because like if we forget that we have to do those 2 lines in one breath, you're gonna be like me, gotta sneak a breath in there, yeah. So maikai, I'm glad that it came back to you. Maikai no. I'm going to turn the time over to Hoku, and she's gonna give us some background about ʻŌlelo Noʻeau.
Okay, mahalo. So what chanting does when we've done it together is now you're all sitting up tall, yeah? So because you had to chant, everybody's sitting up nice and tall. So that's maikai. But let's continue to do that. So ʻŌlelo Noʻeau are seen as Hawaiian proverbs or poetical sayings. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this book first, just a tiny bit, and the whole idea of how and what ʻŌlelo Noʻeau are. This particular book, Hawaiian Proverbs and Poetical Sayings, was collected and translated between 1910 and 1960 by Kawena Puku'i. Kawena was, however, unable to give direct guidance in the final preparation of this book because of her advanced age and fragile health. Her daughter, Patience Wiggins, was able to help her. Patient Wiggins Bacon was able to help in the final completion, as well as other people that worked very closely with her while the compilation was happening. However, the authors and contributors recognize that the more subtle connotations may only be known by native Hawaiian speakers or those deeply immersed in Hawaiian culture and history. We know when we go to this book, if you're familiar with this book, we know when we go to the book, you can flip through it, you can look at the different, and we'll bring them up in a moment, and think about what these are saying. And as we get through some of these ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, you'll see what we mean. ʻŌlelo Noʻeau can also be found in Hawaiian language newspapers, in family sayings, in mele, and in mo'olelo. So they are not only in this book, but have been compiled in this book, but they can be found in many other places as well. Why we use them is a remembrance of the Hawaiian worldview and what we want to continue thinking about and adding to our lives in the Hawaiian worldview. They show us how our kupuna thought, what they saw, what they thought about, and ʻŌlelo Noʻeau coupled with mo'olelo and mele are three really great ways that we can know what were in the minds of our kupuna. They show us different emotions and outlooks. And one of the kind of fun things, fun kind of mele that we know about that Kumuhula Kelly Shell is an excellent exponent of, is called hakukole. And hakukole are those phrases or sayings that are mostly located in mele, but not only. And they're often, how do I put this? They're often tongue-in-cheek or a little risque sometimes. So all in all, super fun when you hear them or see them. There is one mele that talks about a ship that comes into the harbor, and the pilots, the harbor pilots, ease into this harbor. And it really is talking about a woman who is kind of open to the harbor pilots of the world as they ease into her harbor. So like that, sometimes hakukole, and our kupuna said it in such a lovely way that you never would have thought, what? The ship going into the harbor? Oh my gosh. Okay, so yes, Deanna, if you sing, you know that one. So never again will you sing the same way without kind of laughing inside. Okay, anyway, these kinds of sayings, phrases, thoughts, mana'o are all a part of ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. Can we, next one, please? So the first ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that I wanted to bring forward is one that is often known in halau. It's a'a kahula, waiho kahila makahale, which means dare to dance, leave shyness at the house. Yeah, leave your shyness. A'a kahula, waiho kahila makahale. Leave that shyness. Okay, now when I teach this, I also think, I'm a kumuhula, so this is what I teach my halau. But I often think it's not only for hula, but for life itself. Yes, as a kumuhula, I encourage my haumana to not be afraid of dancing. I often say, why are you learning hula if you're not gonna dance? It's like saying, why are you learning to sing if you're not going to sing? Why are you learning to dance if you're not going to dance? Hula takes you out of your comfort zone and encourages you to be uncomfortable. Know that you don't know everything and are here to learn, and stand and gives you discipline to keep trying to be better. Then be bold and take what you have learned and stand on that dance floor and share it. I also feel that this ʻŌlelo Noʻeau teaches us a life lesson: to take what you have learned and be bold about how you use it and share it. In Hawaiian culture, you are often encouraged to use what you know and have learned, then help others with the knowledge that you possess. Then pass that on to the generations to follow. A'a kahula, waiho ka hila hila makahale. Dare to dance, dare to be bold. Leave your shyness at home. Next.
Mahalo Hōkū. I love that ʻŌlelo Noʻeau as well. And, I think as hula people, right, it's one that we connect with because it directly speaks about hula, but it can be applied in so many different ways, right? Being brave, even being brave enough to participate in Kīpaepae, to Oli for the first time, right? Those kinds of things that take us out of our comfort zone. So mahalo, I love that one. I'm gonna share an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that's a little bit more place-based. So there are proverbs that you can find, proverbs, wise sayings that you can find that talk about specific places. And the way that Pukui and the authors of the Puke ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau book that Hoku showed you, organize that is you can go to the index and actually look up by place name, and it'll give you all of the numbers of the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that correspond with that particular place. So for example, if you went to the index and you looked up Wailuku, there would be several numbers that are ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that speak of Wailuku. So one of them is this. And I was thinking, I was gonna put the number in here that where you can find it in the Puke, but you know what? I'm sure you can find it if you have the book. We don't have the numbers here with us. But this one is about Wailuku. And so for us, when we're doing Kīpaepae and we want to use an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that talks about our place, if we're all gathered, imagine we're all gathered at the college and we have guests that are coming to visit us. And so in our Kīpaepae, we want to include an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that hoʻokama'aina, ho'olauna, right, introduces our guests to our place. So we know that the college is in the larger moku or land district that is called Wailuku. Wailuku is one of Nawaiʻeha, the 4 sacred waters of Maui. So it would be very appropriate to share this ʻŌlelo Noʻeau with them. Wailuku i ka malu he kuava. Yeah, literally translates as Wailuku, in the shelter of the valley. So malu here is the word for shelter. Kuava is the word being used here for valley. There are other words we can use for valley as well, but here kuava is being used. And so when we get into explaining the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, it gives our visitors a glimpse into what Wailuku is like, what it's known for, right? So if I were sharing this ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, I would talk about a couple of things. So first, as a kama'aina, right? As people who are kama'aina, who are familiar with Wailuku, perhaps we live there. We all know we come together and work in Wailuku, right? We are familiar with iao. And when we think about the valley being talked about here, the valley is iao. And it talks about how Wailuku is in the shelter of this valley. And so we would be able to physically point to that, right, to our guests, to show them mauna ka halavai, to show them where ʻŌlelo is and the valley that's being talked about here. And then we could further explain that ʻŌlelo is that shelter. So if you've ever been up into ʻŌlelo and you're driving up, I drive up every morning to take my mo'opuna to school. And as I'm driving up, you can literally just see the change where the mountains just encompass you, right? And that's the idea of this ikamalu hekuava, is that the mountains there shelter us. They become, malu also means protection. So they become this protection for us as well. ʻŌlelo is a central part of the moku of Wailuku, and there's a whole history that goes along with ʻŌlelo, some of which talks about how the highest ranking ali'i were buried there in the valley of ʻŌlelo, right? And so that adds to the mana of this place, of this wahipana, this place name. We could also share that this is where we find Kawaʻa Kane, the waters of Kane. So Wailuku is important because it shelters and houses Kawaʻa Kane, the life-giving waters of Kane, right? So all of this history is revealed as we share the mana'o of this ʻŌlelo Noʻeau with our guests. And so it's a great way to help them get familiar with the place that they are visiting. And it's also a great reminder to all of us of what surrounds us, right? The importance of these wahipana. Another thing that we can share is that if you're up early enough in the morning, right, you can see Wailuku and you can see the valley in all of its glory, clear, bright and clear with no clouds, right? Often that's what we wake up to if you live in Wailuku or in this area. And the valley is exposed, yeah? But if you're not up early enough, by mid-morning or midday, you're not going to get that sight, right? You're not going to have the privilege of seeing that beautiful sight, because what happens? The uhiwai comes in, right? The mist rolls in, the rain clouds roll in. That's an important part of what happens in this kuava, in this valley, right? Is that the rain clouds come in and provide that rain and provide the vai that we need to survive. So encouraging us to wake up a little early to be able to witness, Wailuku and the kuava, the valley, in all of its splendor. So these are things that come out of this one simple phrase, Wailuku ikamalu hekuava. I'm going to turn it over to Hoku now to share the next one.
Mahalo. Before I look at this, I'm going to give you homework. Luana said, I'm going to give you homework. The sun is rising at 7 o'clock in the morning nowadays. It's not like dark 100 when that happens. It's 7 o'clock. You should be up already. Maybe you took a shower and maybe you're starting with your cup of coffee. Go outside. Go outside no matter where you are. Go outside no matter what part of the island you come from. Go outside and see how your morning begins in the place that you live. See how the light comes onto the mountains, perhaps. See how the light comes onto the ocean, perhaps. See what the morning is all about, yeah? And if you are fortunate to live on this side of the island, which is where I live, on the Waiʻeha side of the island, you can look towards Wailuku and see how the morning begins. So I give you homework. In the course of the next week, wake up before 7. If you want to get your cup of coffee, that's fine. If you didn't brush your teeth yet, never mind, you're still at home. And go outside and see how your morning begins. Okay, moving on. So, ikani no kapahu ika olohaka oloko. It is the space inside that gives the drum its sound. It is the empty-headed one that does the most talking. Okay, At first look at the Hawaiian and English translation, it can be really straightforward and maybe even a little funny. Yes, space in a drum is what makes the sound. But when you look at the explanation or Hawaiian thought behind it, it is very different. It reinforces what we learn at home. If you're gonna say something, make sure it has value. Yeah, that's an important part of being in a Hawaiian home. Incessant chatter is not valued in a traditional Hawaiian home. Is incessant chatter. My tutu would go like this. Yeah. This is exactly opposite view of a Western thought. In Western thinking, saying what you want to, when you want to, is encouraged. This ʻŌlelo Noʻeau as well tells us to think carefully before you speak. Yeah, so when you think about this, oh yeah, it is a drum, but in our eyes, that empty-headed one is the one that does the most talking. You know, sometimes here at the college, we view folks that ask questions as being worthy of our attention. Let's put it that way, worthy of our attention. But in Hawaiian culture, we are very clear that you also have to show us. You have to show us what you know, not only talk us, not only tell us, you have to show us. So it is the empty-headed one that does the most talking. You know, so for us who were raised in Hawaiian household, we like laugh when we read this. It's a haha one to us. It's a haha one. Because we know our tutus. This is what my tutu, my grandmother spoke Hawaiian. She was bilingual. She was a manaleo. She spoke Hawaiian as her first language, English as her second. So what she would always say is she goes like this, oh, eha ka pepeao. Yeah, and always got to have the oh like that. And oh, eha ka pepeao means, oh, my ears hurt. Yeah, so when she does that, that means, something going on, something going on. That's what this says. Ikani no ka pahu I ka olohaka oloko. It is the space inside that gives the drum its sound. Or it is the empty-headed one that does the most talking. So think about that a little bit. I'm not saying don't talk. I'm saying you should have value in the things that you say. I have this really good friend who lives on Oahu. He is a well-respected person that makes Hawaiian things with his hands. He always says, do not say the obvious. He always says that, do not say the obvious. One of our other ways to behave or things that we say is, oh, I'm going holo holo, which means I'm going somewhere, I'm going traveling, but which really means I'm going fishing. Yeah, because we believe the fish hear and the fish know. If you say, I'm going fishing, or you might as well turn around and go home. Somebody walk up to you and says, you folks going fishing, and they have the pole and the net, turn around, walk home. That is stating the obvious. So this is my friend. Somebody, he had a Facebook picture on with him in his shorts, and he had his throw net on his shoulder. And someone in the Facebook said, oh, where you went fishing? In the Facebook, he said, no, I went to a party. So in other words, no, I'm not telling you where I went. Are you silly? You go, no, I went to a party. So in other words, be careful of what you say. That is always important in Hawaiian culture. Be careful and sure of what you say. The next, please.
Mahalo, Hoku. Oh, there were so many things that came to my mind when you were sharing about that. Yeah, stating the obvious, definitely. And I love that reminder that, ika ʻŌlelo no keola, ika ʻŌlelo no kamake, which is another proverb, right? In the language, there's life. In the language, there is death. And so one of the reasons we are careful about what we say is because we know that our words have mana, right? So like what Hoku was sharing, he pepeau ko kaʻa, the fish have ears. When we speak out that we're gonna go fishing, they hear us and they run away, right? Because there's that mana in our ʻŌlelo. So maikai, that made me reflect on so many things. Mahalo. This next ʻŌlelo Noʻeau is a little bit environmental, I guess you could say, is one of the ways that we could look at it. E ai I ke kahi, e ka pi I ke kahi. So if we break down the literal translation, it's very simple. The first line, eat some, salt some. So kapi is when you like take the salt and you sprinkle it onto something. Yeah, that action is kapi. And so we know that our kupuna salted things to keep it, to preserve it, right? This was one of the ways of preserving food, preserving the mea'ai, preserving i'a, fish. But so on the surface, it's like, oh, eat some, salt some. Okay, maybe save some for later. But a little deeper when we look at it, it really talks about the importance of taking care of our natural resources. It talks about malama'aina, how we care for the land that is around us. So when we're gathering anything, whether we're mauka, right, in the uplands in the mountains, or makai, down at the ocean, it's important that we only take what we need, right? Our kupuna would never overfish an area or just take all that they could, right? Just what was needed, right? And what was taken was always shared as well, right? With others in that moku, in that district perhaps, or even in the ahupua'a. And so this is the same for us as hula people, right? As hula people, we're taught part of protocol when you are a po'e hula, a hula person, is when you go mauka, because we have to go up into the mountains a lot to go and gather, right? We go there to gather the kinolau, the manifestations of laka. So first of all, having that mindset that we're not just going to gather plants, we're gathering the physical manifestation of laka, the goddess of hula. So that reverence, that sense of ho'ihi or respect that we have when we go. And then when we go, we know that a couple of things that are a must. First, we don't step on the babies, right? We are careful in how we tread through the forest, making sure that we're not stepping on the younger plants, not destroying anything, right? Very enihikahele, we're very cautious in how we step and the steps that we take. And then only taking what we need. So as po'e hula, we know how much palapalai we need to make our leipo'o or to make our kupe'e. That's what we take, and we make sure that there is plenty left behind, right? That the babies are able to grow and sprout, that there is some for the next person, the next po'e hula who needs to make a leipo'o palapalai perhaps, right? That there will be enough for them to gather, and that there will be enough for our future generations. And that's a mindset and even a Lawena, a custom, a tradition, I think we're losing. Yeah, we're losing. Whereas the mindset perhaps now for some is, I'm going to take everything, right? I'm going to go, I'm going to take everything. I'm going, get choke moi down at this certain location. I'm going to go and I'm going to get as much as I can, rather than I'm going to take what I need for myself, my ohana, And I'm going to make sure that there's enough left behind for others to be able to come and gather. So this is a great ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that helps us to remember this concept of take some, leave some, right? There's a great book, a children's book that is titled E Ai I Ke Kahi, E Kapi I Ke Kahi. You can find it on ulukau.org. And you can also purchase the physical copy of the book. So it's a beautiful book. I have it at home for when my children were little, and now my mo'opuna is reading it. And that's what each page of the book talks about, is going holo holo, right? Going holo holo makai at the ocean and only taking enough and making sure you leave some behind. So this can apply to us in so many ways, right? Again, I think one of the best ways that could really help address a lot of the issues that we face environmentally, the challenges that we face in our world, is by going back to this really simple proverb, e ai ke kahi, e kapi I ke kahi. Always making sure that there is some left behind. Mikai, hoku, ko manawa. Oh no, it's both of us. Did you want to add anything before we go into the application part?
Well, I absolutely love the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau for all the ways that you said it. That we have to remember that the only preservative, the most important preservatives that Hawaiians had was salt. So when you look at what it's saying here, definitely to preserve in all the ways we know that word to mean in English. Yeah, for the future, for the moment, to take care of, to be used at a later time. So all of those definitions also works for this, and it's a nice little ʻŌlelo Noʻeau for us to remember. Mahalo. So let me talk a little bit about the application, and then you can rest your voice for a moment, and then you can jump in after. So how does the application work for me? Well, one of the ways that it does is I teach ʻŌlelo Noʻeau in halau. Every class, they have to recite an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau from memory, and I give them ʻŌlelo Noʻeau and the translations and an explanation and a thought process. And they are to memorize it. And then each time you come to class, you repeat the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau from memory. So right now we're up to 9 ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. This week they're going to get their number 10. And so you'd never know when it's going to be your turn to say the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, because I'll go, okay, so-and-so's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up to 9. And so, they're going like this, okay, which one is mine? Trying to which one is mine? Number 8, okay. Yeah, so you never know what ʻŌlelo Noʻeau is going to be assigned to you for you to repeat in class. Now, once they have learned all of this, and occasionally I will ask in class, which one do you think of and use the most in your daily life? Which one of these 9 do you think of and do you use the most in your daily life? Or which one especially speaks to you? And they have all kinds. The first one they ever learned is what Luana said to us today, palike kua mahina ke alo. That was the first one they ever learned, which means back as straight as the cliff, face as bright as the moon, which describes a beautiful woman, but it also describes a beautiful hula dancer. And that's how I teach them. This ʻŌlelo Noʻeau is to remind you of how you must dance, how you must keep your back straight, your face bright and inviting like a full moon. So as they learn each of these ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, one of them is ua lehu lehu a mano mano ka ikena a ka Hawaiʻi which is one we have been exposed to. Great and numerous is the knowledge of the Hawaiians. So I often, every so often, I ask them, which one of these do you use the most? Or do you think of the most? Or do you repeat to your ohana maybe as a way to remind them also of what is important in the minds of our kupuna? So I use these particular ʻŌlelo Noʻeau in hula and in halau. Luana?
Mahalo Hōkū. I just typed in the chat box that the name of the book about the going to the ocean and gathering is the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, e ai I ke kahi, e ka pi I ke kahi. So just to answer that question real quick. Okay, so how do I use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau? Well, there's a few different ways that I use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. I like to open each of my classes with a proverb, whether they are a Hawaiian cultural or language class or not. So for at Paikamana, we teach an interdisciplinary studies course that is strengthening, can't remember the name, college strengthening through culture. And in every class, we start with an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. We start with one of these proverbs. Sometimes the proverb ties into what we're going to learn in class or what we're learning in class that week, perhaps. Sometimes it's just a motivational ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, something like kulia I kanu'u, strive for the summit. And we talk about Queen Kapiʻolani, how this was her motto, and that our ancestors always strive to do their very best. Something as simple as that to start off the class. That can be applied in any content area, right? It's not specific to a particular subject or particular theme. It's something that is very general that can be applied just in for students in general, right? To kulia I kanu'u. Now, same thing if you are non-instructional, if you're working in an office, if you're working with a team or leading a team. ʻŌlelo Noʻeau can be used in a variety of ways. We at Paikamana, we use it as part of our staff agenda. So at the top of the agenda, we'll have an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that we share, that we talk about, that we focus on. Sometimes we do that monthly, sometimes we do that weekly, depending on, how we want to do it. Totally up to you. It can be shared as part of a morning briefing. Maybe you're part of the security team and you do morning briefings or shift briefings, and ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, something simple, can be shared at that particular time. There's so many, there isn't a time where, oh no, we shouldn't share an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. It could be shared anytime you want to motivate someone, you want to share ʻike or knowledge with someone. You could get more intricate and look at the themes of what you're teaching, what you're training on, what you're instructing on, and you could pick an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that goes with those units. So that's something where if you wanted to dig a little deeper into it. I also use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau for a midterm project. So at midterm, they choose an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that resonates with them, write about it, right? Do a writing project. So again, that could apply across subject matter. Yeah, could apply anywhere. You could use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau as an overarching theme when you're planning your curriculum, when you are creating slows. That's another way you could use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. You can pick an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, just one, and let that be the theme for the whole semester, right? Or on a quarterly basis, if you're non-instructional. Another way is to have your staff or your students pick an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that they'll share in class or at one of your meetings or staff meeting or whatever it is, at one of the times where you come together as a group. So these are all very easy ways where you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to make it all fit in with your agenda or with your outline for what you're teaching, but you can do it, very simple, just starting off very simple. And I also encourage you to pick, short ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, like kulia I kanu'u, something like that, or just the word onipa'a, right? To be steadfast, to be firm. Again, it doesn't have to be, something that you're going to spend all this extra time on. It can be very easily, seamlessly incorporated into really everything that we do on our campus. And at the beginning, if you maybe need a little bit of guidance on or direction, or point you in the right direction, call on us. We're happy to point you in the right direction to help you get started with this. And once you get started, you'll actually, I think you'll find it fun and enjoyable, and that there's so many, just in the Puke ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, there's over 2,000 proverbs in that one book. Another thing too that I've done with students is we'll study some ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, and then I'll have them make one up. Yeah. What kind of a wise saying can you create now? And then comparisons to other cultures. So, practically every culture has some kind of saying or wise sayings like this that are or proverbs that are comparable. So another thing that you could do was make comparisons with Hawaiian proverbs, and maybe perhaps I have a class that this semester where I have a lot of international students. So making comparisons with their culture really helps them to connect with the content, right? So that's another way that you can use ʻŌlelo Noʻeau. So those are some thoughts. Hoku, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a little haha. Because we sometimes we think some of these things are so important and deep, and can I do it? Okay. Someday, if you're with Chancellor Hōkūlani, you ask him, what is the ʻŌlelo Noʻeau about golf down at Waihe'e golf place? There's an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau for golfing if you're at Waiʻehu Golf Course. And his ʻŌlelo Noʻeau says, if it is cloudy at that point, hurry up. Because what that means is the rain is coming. Yeah, if you see the clouds over there, hurry up, because the rain is coming. So, an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau can be like that. If you see the rain at that point, hurry up. Your ʻŌlelo Noʻeau for golfing at Waiʻehu Golf Course.
I love that. And that's the whole, idea is that I love that you mentioned that, because you're right. Sometimes we just think that there are all of these wise sayings, but they can be fun sayings as well. Yeah. Maika'i. Are there any questions?
Can I add in about the workshop that we also do with our Pikamana students?
Sure.
Before in person, we would always have an art workshop for our students to do either paint. We always did it during the middle of the semester to uplift them. We would have them pick out an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that means something important to them, and have them go through the book, or we'll also have some already picked out, and then they can paint, draw, what that ʻŌlelo Noʻeau means to them, and then write a little bit about why it's important to them. And we would put it up inside our lab, inside the office. So then every time they would come in, they'd see their artwork and also remember why they're still in school and why they're pushing forward. So yeah, we did have a few too virtually, but we didn't really have that much people show up, but it was still fun. But hope to do that soon in person.
Mahalo, Tiki. Thank you for sharing that. And I know our students really enjoy that. Yeah. Something easy that you can do as well. Yeah. Maika'i. Okay. I think we're winding down. So on this slide, this is the link to all of the Kīpaepae recordings. So all of the previous sessions that we've had that you can go back and watch and review and practice. And then the next session will be on pilina, building relationships, how we do that as poʻe Hawaii, as Hawaiian people, how our kupuna, how our ancestors did that. And then the last one for this semester will be the haʻi ʻŌlelo, how do you create a short speech that can be given during a kīpaepae. So we wanted to do ʻŌlelo Noʻeau first because ʻŌlelo Noʻeau usually play a role in these haʻi ʻŌlelo or these speeches that we do. So that's kind of the shift in the order. And then I'm going to just ask Hōkū if there's anything else that we want to share before we end.
No, I would like to just remind, especially those of you who have been chugging along with us in our Kīpaepae series, that we will have a summer intensive learning session. We're still planning that. Of course, part of it has to do with how we will be in our community. We hope that we will be able to have some face-to-face time, but there will be a summer intensive learning session coming up that will expand and practice and do the things that we are doing here at Kīpaepae, plus some hana noʻeau activities as well.
So mahalo nui, we look forward to seeing you next month. So February, we'll have another Kīpaepae, and then I think the third one will be in April. And thank you, mahalo nui to Joyce for helping us stay on track and getting all the information out to everyone. And then we will follow up with the slides for from today's presentation. Mahalo nui, aloha ahui ho.